I think this situation that Dylan Gabriel is going to be starting this Sunday's game versus the Vikings is a really, really good thing for Shedeur. And I have a couple reasons why. So, first to start with, sitting as Shedeur is doing is great. It's great for a rookie. I think that the Browns organization really sees something in Shedeur. They're trying to mold him. They're trying to grow him, and they're trying to take their time with him. I really truly believe that. Now, the opposite could be true, that they're alienating him and they're not letting him get much reps, and they don't really believe in him. The owner came out and said he doesn't really believe in him. The GM was like, I'm the one who drafted him. I believe in him. Stefanski really, he preferred Dylan Gabriel, which they got before Shedeur. So I think there's a lot of ways that this could be looked at. But for me, I think that Shedeur sitting is a huge positive. I think the Browns are trying to tell Shedeur, prove us wrong. Prove us wrong in how you carry yourself. Prove us wrong in how, the pressure of the organization, how you're dealing with the media, how you're in practice. Do all of this and still come out and ball in practice. And I think for him to still do what he's doing, showing how mature he is, answering questions the right way, being so involved in the community, I think this is creating a huge buy-in for not only the organization, but the owners, the players, the community itself, Cleveland itself. And I think Kevin Stefanski is starting to come around with Shedeur. And I know he loves every single day of his life being asked a question about, is Shedeur going to get some playing time today? But I think that they're trying to make him prove himself in many aspects. And I think that he's doing that, and he will eventually be, mark my words, the Cleveland starting franchise quarterback. Not only just the starting quarterback, but the franchise quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. And another positive, I think that, not playing is hurt, not playing or him not starting. I don't think that's hurting his stock. There's a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of tangible things that he's learning, being able to take his time, being able to watch what Dylan is doing, and also being able to watch what, the professional, the long journeyman, Super Bowl champion Joe Flacco is doing. And I think this is a really good situation, not to mention, Deshaun Watson in the background, but I think this is a really good situation that not playing is only helping him. He gets to sit back and see how Dylan operates, especially he's going to get to sit back and see how Dylan is going to operate versus Vikings, a very well-coached team without their, number one quarterback, but still with, Justin Jefferson and a lot of weapons, a really good defense as well. So he's going to get to sit back and see how that goes. And guess what? Hey, if Dylan Gabriel can't really pull his stuff, and then that means that Flacco is going to get back in there and make things happen. And maybe, Flacco does X, Y, and Z, and they're like, you know what, Shedeur, you're back up. Who knows? Anything could happen, but I don't think not playing is hurting his stock. Out of all three quarterbacks, he's in the best position. Dylan Gabriel has to go play, and he has to perform well. He has to play well. It's not a if, ands, or buts, but he has to play well because they bench Joe Flacco for him. So essentially, they're saying, this is your opportunity, Dylan. Show us what you can do. And he's showing it on a national stage against a very, very good team. You know who's not doing that? And who has that pressure? Shedeur Sanders. So I think this is a huge positive for him. Another thing, I think the media is the problem. Now, hear me out. A lot of the news that I get, a lot of the news that I pay attention to at least, is local news from Cleveland. So a lot of the journalists, a lot of the YouTubers I even watch, they're from Cleveland. They're in Cleveland. They're part of the team in some way. They've been around, the Browns. They're Browns fans. So they're giving it to you straight. They're giving it to you from the horse's mouth. And they're the boots on the ground. When you watch a lot of these other national medias, it's just clickbait, man. It just feels like clickbait. It just feels like they're just trying to sell a story, is just for entertainment and shock value. I don't really think that they care or really know much about what's going on, but they have to talk about something for an hour. They have to fill all of that ESPN time slot. It's a positive also because I think the Cleveland Browns are trying to see how he handles, how Shedeur Sanders handles the media, how he handles the national attention as well as the local attention. And, in Cleveland, the people who have been talking to Shedeur Sanders, the journalists that are the boots on the ground that have been having conversations with him, asking him questions, I think they're seeing a different side of what the national media on draft day, were reporting. They're seeing that this is actually a person that is kind, a person that is well involved in the community, a person that wants to be in Cleveland. He could have been backing up, Lamar Jackson right now and probably had an opportunity to play, but, he wants to be in Cleveland. He saw Cleveland and he thought this would be a good opportunity for me to be able to come in and be able to bring life to this franchise that hasn't had life for a while, especially from the quarterback standpoint, a franchise quarterback standpoint. So I think these are all really good things that if he continues on this trajectory of just going up with what he's doing, it's only building his credibility. And I think, Stefanski, the owners, the GM, of course, that drafted him, players around him, the Cleveland Browns, the city of Cleveland in general are going to buy more and more into that Shedeur Sanders stock. I do think there are some negatives that I do want to point out about his situation. And, one of that is he's the story every single time, Cleveland Browns get brought up. And what I mean by that is he's always the headline. Joe Flacco, has a bad game. Cool. No one really cares. We expect that from Joe Flacco. But you know what the next question is? Hey, when is Shedeur Sanders getting a chance? Is he up next? How much time is he going to be able to get? Is he getting any playing time? Is he getting any throwing this week? What's going on? Is he moving up in the depth chart of the quarterback? The story is always about him. And I think that in a way that it's exhausting. It's really exhausting that he always feels like he has to be perfect. He always has to say the right things. He always has to do the right things. He always has to be in the right situations. He always has to do something. And that's a lot of pressure on a rookie quarterback drafted in the 5th round and is 3rd in the depth chart. I don't think these same responsibilities and these same, these same situations are likewise for Dillon Gabriel and Joe Flacco. I mean, Joe Flacco is, the seasoned veteran. He's just there to win a couple of games to be able to, bestow some wisdom upon Dillon and Shedeur and also Deshaun Jackson, hopefully. But, his role is different. Dillon Gabriel, on the other hand, is the 2nd round pick or 3rd round pick, and they're expecting him to, they think Stephen Stefanski really wanted him, so they think that he could be their franchise quarterback. But he also has a lot of adversities that he's facing, being that one of the things being his height for a quarterback. Now, Tyler Murray is doing well, so I don't think, height is all that important, but they saw something in him in the way that he's poised, in the way that he carries himself, in the way that he just seems to be just a plug-and-play quarterback. I'm not sure if I'll call it a system quarterback, but he just seems to be, like a leader and kind of like a silent assassin in a way. And that's exciting. That is a coach's, coaches love that. Coaches love a quiet person, a quiet quarterback as well, very non-confrontational, just, is just going to do what they're asked. Is not going to be doing, they're not going to be doing a lot of improvising, but they're just going to follow the playbook and just do as they're told. Coaches love that. You know why? Because it's a headache-free. It's headache-free. You don't have to worry about them getting in trouble. You don't have to worry about them saying the wrong things. You don't have to worry about them doing the wrong things. You don't have to worry about them, doing some improv on doing things on the fly. they will do what you tell them, how you tell them to do it, or try to do that to the best of their ability. So I think that's huge for Dylan Gabriel. But he just doesn't get that same, and is not getting that same, and is not because of Shedeur or whatnot, but that's just the media. That's what the media is doing. They're pitting Shedeur and Dylan Gabriel versus, versus one another. And I think another negative that I think that this situation of not really playing much is having for Shedeur is, his confidence is being tested every day. So how do you deal with the media? How do you deal with being the third string quarterback? How do you deal with not having a lot of reps? How do you deal with all of this situation? Still be a professional, come back day in and day out, do everything you got to do, recovery, practicing, media, whatever you got to do. Doing that day in and day out and knowing that you're not getting to play an opportunity, you might not be playing. And even with Joe Flacco out or injured, or even with Joe Flacco being benched, that you're still third on the depth chart. They've seen enough from Joe Flacco that they're like, we're going to move on to the next person, and you're still third. That is going to take a big hit to his confidence. And that's one of the things that the Browns are testing. And I think, it could be a negative for Shedeur. How is he going to be handling that every single day? But that's some of the tests that I think Stefanski and the Browns organization are trying to see if he's going to overcome. And lastly, I think one of the biggest negatives could be, people in the organization could be rooting against him. A lot of these media, national media that's covering the team, I strongly think that all these headlines, all the information that they're getting, I don't think they're getting from anywhere. I think that there's a reason. I think that there's a person. I think that there's perhaps a machine in place that's just feeding them all these information. It could be that way, because I don't think Rex Ryan would just wake up one day and be like, well, I don't think Shedeur is, sitting in front of the classroom and really trying to be that quarterback. Where would he get that information? How would he know that? What would make him want to talk about that? So I'm not sure if, there are people in the organization that, just don't like Shedeur. Perhaps they prefer Dylan or they prefer somebody else, but maybe they just don't like Shedeur. Maybe they just don't like how he carries himself or his dad. So I think that, all of these situations, all these different scenarios, could make sense. These are the positives and the negatives of why I think Shedeur Sanders is in a perfect situation, being third in the depth chart as a Cleveland Browns quarterback. And I think that I strongly still believe this is a really, really good situation for Shedeur Sanders. And I can't wait to see where things go, especially after the game this Sunday. But you know what? I want to know your thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this content, if you like talking about the Browns, if you like talking about football, if you like just talking about sports in general, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and consider subscribing, because without you, there wouldn't be a Nick Kabari show. I'm Nick Kabari. I'll see you in the next one.